Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, fresh back from day 2 of the joint practices. So, I know you guys have a lot of questions, and I want to get to a lot of those questions and have a great conversation and bring you some sound and all that sort of stuff. But out at TCO Performance Center, before I left here to come back to the studio, I had a conversation with Dane Mizutani, the Pioneer Press. We did basically a post game show for the joint practices. And I know you guys can see the headline. JJ McCarthy had a pretty darn remarkable day. So, what I want to do is I want to start out by bringing you that conversation with myself and Dane, and we were just off the practice field. So we were reacting to their reactions. We had just heard from KOC and just heard from JJ McCarthy. And I'll just give you a little sneak peek of this conversation. I think everybody was pretty excited about what happened today for the Minnesota Vikings practicing against the New England Patriots. So I'm just going to jump right into that. And if you are in for the long haul for the live stream, welcome, settle in, because after the conversation with Dane, I'll be doing Q&A as always on the live stream. So I am super happy to have you all here, and it's a corner turning moment, I think, for JJ McCarthy and the Minnesota Vikings. So let me dive right in to my discussion with Dane Mizatani, the Pioneer Press, just a couple hours ago, right after practice at TCO Performance Center. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, along with Dane Mizatani of the Pioneer Press, and we are inside TCO Performance Center after spending the last, 2.5 hours out on the field here watching joint practices between the Minnesota Vikings and the New England Patriots. And I'm not going to spend much time messing around. This was the best practice of JJ McCarthy's career, not just this year, of his career today. At one point, he completed 13 passes in a row, 11 on 11s, red zone, 2-minute situation. He was nothing short of brilliant in a 2-minute drive that was finished off with a really accurate, well-placed ball to Jordan Addison in the back of the end zone. He made good decisions with the football. He threw the football accurately. There were multiple occasions of touch passes. He delivered a, what do you call it? Like a swing pass to Aaron Jones that went down the field, that went over the top of the defense for a 30 or 40 yard gain. Underneath stuff was accurate. Intermediate stuff was good. The deep throws were good. He was absolutely on point today. And adding to JJ McCarthy's big day was the fact that Jalen Naylor got banged up in this practice. Doesn't sound like it's serious, but there was a lot of Thayer Thomas out there. There was a lot of Lucky Jackson out there, and he was unfazed finding Thayer Thomas on multiple occasions in this practice. And but of course, it was TJ Hawkinson. It was Jordan Addison doing a lot of the heavy lifting, as you would expect. But if you're looking for a reason to feel like JJ McCarthy turned the corner to being truly QB1 of the Minnesota Vikings, and not just something they're kind of working around on a great roster, but rather someone who could drive their success, today was your day. If you were a fan that showed up out here and watched this, you walked away saying, whoa. And our good friend Chad Graff came up and said, where do I put my money on the Vikings for the Super Bowl after that practice? It was truly that good, Dana. Am I exaggerating?
No. And I think throughout training camp, me, you, most of the beat writers, I would say, who come here every day have said up and down, some good, some bad. Oh, today was more good than more bad, whatever. We're all going to say the same thing today. He was incredible today. And I don't think anything that you hear will be hyperbole, because he was that good. I asked JJ McCarthy after practice, what was your favorite throw? Do you have one you're most proud of? And even he gave a little smirk and said, there were a lot of good ones. And there were. You can go down the list. Depending how you take notes at practice. I text myself the notes. Coller texts himself or writes notes on his little notepad. You got to scroll quite a ways to find where I started today, because there were just so many notable plays. I think throughout training camp, there have been days where it's like, okay, 2 or 3 good throws. Today, there were legitimately 15, and I don't think that's exaggerating it. The way the day started, they started on work in the red zone, 7-on-7 in the red zone. And I thought it was interesting. There was a miss early in the day. Jordan Addison, back of the end zone, he missed it. The ball is there. He overthrows it. It looks like the miss he's had throughout training camp. And I was thinking to myself, okay, maybe it's just going to be another one of those days, up and down, up and down. He flipped the switch from that point forward. And like you said, I think people who track stats had him at 13 straight completions at one point, which is pretty unheard of considering it was a joint practice against a team that was invested in seeing their defense and how it would succeed. And it wasn't 7-on-7. It was 13 straight passes across 7-on-7, across red zone, across 11-on-11 in 2 minute. He really dominated for the span of practice. And I think when you look back on training camp as a whole, you'll point to this day as the one that said, hey, maybe that was the day that he truly turned the page. Now, he has to do it again. He has to do it again and again and again. And for the next 2 weeks leading up to the season opener. But today was the first day where I thought to myself, like you said, he could maybe drive the success of this team at times. I was feeling more, okay, he's going to manage the game. And while that might still be the case at times this year, I think there are reasons to believe now after what we saw today, he could be the driver of success by the time this thing is over.
Well, a lot of people have asked just how his camp compares to Sam Darnold, and I've kind of gone back to, well, it's not really fair because Sam Darnold has just played so much more football than JJ McCarthy. But if we are going to compare, it was right around this time of year where the light switch came on, and all of a sudden we started saying some of the same things last year. And I recall going on radio hits and things like that in other cities. And they're asking, well, how does Sam Darnold look? And I was saying, guys, I think I'm buying this because of how good he looked around this time of year in practice, right before and going into the second preseason game. And this feels like the corner that was turned. It also is a huge confidence moment for JJ McCarthy. Now, we've never doubted that McCarthy is a confident person, a confident leader. We've been around him now for 2 years, and you see it every time that he's at the podium or when he's running a 2-minute drill or how he operates the offense. But every person in existence wonders, can I do it? Like, is it going to work for me? Am I going to make this happen? Am I going to become what I think I can be? Every person has that in the back of their head. And for a guy who hasn't played a football game in a really, really long time to go out against a different team and perform this way, to me, is a huge confident building. Yes, I can, because the New England Patriots were not playing some vanilla defense. They were not showing up here and saying, well, we're just going to treat this like a light little practice. There were probably 4 different scrums of guys getting together. It was getting physical out there. It was getting violent out there. We'll talk about the defense in a little bit because I watched a lot more of the defense today than I did yesterday. But it was a game type atmosphere, only people weren't being brought to the ground. And my favorite throw of his, I think, was almost every single one on the 2-minute drill. The one that he ended the 2-minute drill, the back of the end zone, where it's a placement type of throw to Jordan Addison, put the football where Addison can get it. And he mentioned on that throw adapting his arm angle, which is something I think he's been very good at in this camp. But we've also seen him, airmail some throws or miss on some throws when he's trying to kind of flip his hips or throw it a little bit off platform or have to make an adjustment in the pocket. But this one was right on the money. Let me just take you through the entire 2-minute drill because there was something he mentioned after which really popped to me. So he completed a pass to Thayer Thomas, which I thought Thayer had a great practice. Honestly, this guy keeps showing up every year. Then on time to Jordan Addison. But then after that, there was a situation where the Patriots clearly won up front and they got some pressure on him and there was nothing there. He didn't waste any time at all and threw the ball away. And he said that was McCown's favorite play of that drive. Stop the clock because the situation was they needed to get in the end zone. It was, 21 to 27
to 21 with 1 minute left on the clock. So time is very important.
Right. Time is very important there. He throws the ball out of bounds. He misses on a throw after that, then comes back and scrambles, but scrambles definitively, quickly. Protection breaks down, gets a big gain, and then bang, hits Jordan Addison in the back of the end zone. But it was just one smart decision after the next. And I wrote down what Kevin O'Connell said about it. He called his day decisive and with conviction. And that's exactly what I thought of JJ McCarthy. And it's the accuracy we've sort of been asking for. And by the way, it's just funny sometimes when, we do podcasts and we're like, well, there was, some missed throws and things like that. And then McCarthy comes to the podium and says, yesterday I missed some throws that I wanted back. But today it didn't feel like there were very many of those at all. And where we're trying to project him into the season and what can he be, I don't think there's anything that does a better job of projecting quarterbacks than the 2-minute drill, because he said, and I asked him about that. I said, why has that worked for you? And he said, it truly feels like a game when I'm out there. It truly feels like I got the clock, I got the pressure and the tension of the moment, and the defense, everyone's dialed in. And it's kind of like almost like a boxing match or whatever. When they do the 2-minute, everyone's gathered around both sidelines watching every single play intently. There is real pressure out there in practice. And he looked very calm, very in control, and made that great decision to throw it away, a great decision to scramble, and then has a chance to throw a touchdown pass. I mean, this was, you could sense it in Kevin O'Connell when he talked. You could sense it in JJ McCarthy when he came off the field. Both of those guys, you could not wipe the smile off their face after the day that JJ McCarthy and the offense had. Yeah,
and I think the way to end it, like throwing a touchdown to Jordan Addison at the end of a day, to kind of put the bow on it. Now, if they leave meat on the bone and they don't get into the end zone in the 2-minute drill, it's still a good practice. But just to kind of put a stamp on it, culminate it with a touchdown throw to Addison, I thought that was really good. Something I thought that was interesting, what JJ McCarthy said when he was talking to us, is he talked about yesterday's practice. He talked about how he prepared for yesterday's practice. And he said what he did was he went back and he watched the preseason game that the Patriots just played with the Washington Commanders. And he, in his head, he thought, okay, is that something I'm going to see in joint practices? I should dig into this film. And he said he came out yesterday and was completely different. So to take what you kind of put on tape yesterday, and Kevin O'Connell said they game planned for today, to take what you put on film yesterday and then apply it to the game plan for today, and then for it to look like it did today, I think that's a really good sign. I mean, look, game plans for football games on Sundays are way more complex. But if you really just break it down to the micro, up and down day yesterday, put it on film, watch the film, study the film, game plan for a practice the following day, and then for it to look like that, that is what I would consider something very promising for his ability to take coaching, take a game plan, and apply it in real time. I don't think we've really, I mean, there have probably been times throughout training camp where that's happened, but it has not been explained to us as clear and concise as, yes, we prepared for it this way, and then we went out and we did it. That's what they did. You don't really game plan for a practice against your own team. Like, I think at times Kevin O'Connell would love to game plan for what he thinks Brian Flores is going to do. But they really game planned for today based on what they did yesterday, and it looked like that. I thought that was a good thing to kind of latch on to. He can take coaching, he can apply a game plan in real time, and it can look like that. Doesn't mean it's going to look like that every Sunday, but I thought it was a good lesson for JJ McCarthy to learn. Like, you're sometimes going to have to learn things on the fly, apply things on the fly, and he showed really capable of that today.
So let's talk about what it means that JJ McCarthy had this level of a practice. And overall, I would say yesterday I was talking about maybe a B for a day yesterday. I want to put both days together and give JJ McCarthy an A and say that he passed the joint practice test with flying colors. And we know how important this is to Kevin O'Connell in the evaluation. And it was almost hard for O'Connell and McCarthy to hold themselves back and still say, well, we've got things to do here. We've got more progress to make. We got lots of stuff. But really, this is kind of the end of the summer. I mean, there are 3 practices next week, and we'll do breakdowns and we'll have that discussion. But he's not going to play in another preseason game. He's not going to see another team. And really, once the fans are gone, which is after today, they start the process of really installing that week 1 offense. So this, to me, does more or less end the summertime and begin the process of preparing for the Chicago Bears week 1. And what I think is putting this exclamation point on a training camp that has had its ups and downs for JJ McCarthy, that has gone on the upswing. I thought he was in control of the preseason game, and then to see him come out of that preseason game, have a very good practice on Monday, then a solid up and down practice yesterday, but then today finishing out like this. I think it's not just big for McCarthy feeling like, hey, I can do this against a team with a lot of talent on their defense, but also it's big for everybody else. I mean, TJ Hawkinson was talking about how self-critical McCarthy is, and was also talking about how he feels like he's got total command of this offense at this point, that he's learned so much and he's applying it extremely well. But they need to see it too. I mean, everybody on the team is human. They're all saying going into this camp, we're going to find out what McCarthy is. They're going to say publicly, oh yeah, we're very confident, but they need to see it on the field too. And to have a day like this where everyone is standing around watching that 2-minute drill, watching him control it, make good decisions, smart plays, and then a great throw into the end zone for a touchdown, that felt like the entire, I would say, organization just went, oh, all right. Like that, again, doesn't mean they're winning the Super Bowl. But I think that it does have a ripple effect that goes beyond just, hey, JJ McCarthy had a good day, to everybody on the team seeing that happen and saying, we are so good from top to bottom. And we'll get to the defense where they had another phenomenal day. We are so good from top to bottom. If this guy plays well, we're going to go places. And then they just did it against another team. I think that everyone walked out of today feeling like, yeah, we can go places.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's important for his teammates to see it. Obviously, they're the ones in the heat of battle with him every Sunday. So I think for them to see what it can look like, that it can look like 13 straight completions against another team, is very, very important, is going to be something that does have kind of a lasting impact moving forward, I think, as they prepare for week one. But more than his teammates, and you touched on this a little in the beginning, it's big for him because now I think he can kind of see it. And you mentioned how self-critical he can be of himself. That can be a blessing and a curse. Sometimes you can be self-critical to the point where you're kind of digging yourself into a hole. I think to have a day like this, to have your teammates now believing in you probably more than and ever before, your coaches, the fans that were in the building, I think that gives JJ McCarthy probably a little pep in his step. And maybe I'm reading too much into body language, but he seemed pretty dang happy to talk at the podium today. He was carrying himself with the confidence. He always has that, but it just felt a little extra today. So I think, yeah, is it big for the teammates? Of course, they need to see that at some point. It's big for McCarthy. I think it was big for O'Connell. Fan base too. I mean, they get to see it all too. And then I think it's big for them to kind of see that this guy who I think everybody wants to be the franchise quarterback has it in him somewhere. Now, you have to go out and do it again and again and again to actually realize that potential. But I think today was a good example of what it can look like. I also think maybe we should note he did his entire training camp without Justin Jefferson. So the fact that he can end on such a high note, and I know training camp technically still goes on, but it always does feel like the closing of a chapter when joint practices are over. He hit this culmination without the best receiver in football. He went through these ups and downs without the best receiver in football. There were days where the offense looked clunky, and we were like, yeah, is it going to function? Maybe it will look much better when their best receiver in football is out there. So I think never will I say it was a good thing for Justin Jefferson to not be on the field. I think the reps are important. I think at times there will be growing pains because they didn't have a month of reps. But in the same vein, I think it might be a good thing for JJ to realize, okay, I did all this and I'm going to get the best receiver in football back. All of it, I think, the culmination of today, the culmination of training camp as a whole is something to feel really good about. And I would be pretty surprised if anyone in that locker room wasn't walking around with a little more pep in their step after what happened today.
I also want to Move on to some other parts of the offense that I thought were very good. I mentioned I think the technical term is a rail route from Aaron Jones, where he goes down the field, and this was one where you had to pop it up over everybody and have it drop in the bucket, and McCarthy hit that one really well. We could talk about any throw today. It seemed like McCarthy hit it, but the offensive line, which I did not feel like had a great day in day one. I think they took it a little personal. I didn't see a lot of Darisaw today. I think they're just playing it smart with him. Justin School stood up today to the challenge, and especially the interior, the offensive line, I thought was terrific for JJ McCarthy. Donovan Jackson had a great joint practice. You talk about somebody who needs a confidence boost coming out of that preseason game and someone who needed to make a few plays. I mean, McCarthy was talking about the screen pass that he blocked on yesterday, but I thought today there were just a lot of reps where it's a clear pass situation. The Patriots are dialing it up and going after him. And I just saw the right side of the line holding up pretty well with Donovan Jackson. Will Fries is still getting back into game shape after missing so much time with his leg injury. Ryan Kelly, you could see some of his impact today. I thought they did a terrific job. And I'm really curious about where they stand on these wide receivers, because when you see Lucky Jackson, who did have one drop in the back of the end zone during red zone, that was a tough one, but Lucky Jackson had a good practice overall, and Thayer Thomas stepped up, and he played well. He is clearly the next man up. Kind of I hate to make this comparison, but he kind of, I'm going to go a different direction. You think I'm going to say Chad Beebe. I'm actually going to say BC Johnson as a guy who did not have any particular physical skill that jumped out to you, but just did a lot of things really well and would catch the ball when it came to him. And he did a good job today. But you make a great point. In the NFL, you have to play without your starters sometimes. Guys get hurt, situations happen, and Jalen Naylor's down, next man up, and credit to Thayer, who clearly knows the offense inside and out. Lucky, but these are guys who've never played before, and he's finding them and trusting them and making plays. It was good for their confidence as well, I think, with the O-line holding up and blocking and having their best day, I think, all camp as a group of blockers, but then utilizing these other pass catchers. And I don't know if they're going to go out and get somebody else. Might depend. Naylor's injury does not sound serious. The way it was framed was kind of, we're going to be careful with that and just not give him an opportunity to hurt himself trying to go up and make a play or whatever. But I think that the receivers have shown something, the depth wide receivers, that they might not necessarily have to make some big play for someone. That still remains of interest, but this was a day for them making their case as well. So I think it wasn't just JJ, but it was also a lot of other people, which brings me to a FanDuel question of the day, Dane, which is, so right now the Minnesota Vikings are plus 120 to win 9.5 games or more, or to win more than 9.5 games. So 10 wins or more, plus 120. Would you guess that they win after what you just saw here out at joint practices, 10 or more football games?
Yeah, I'm laughing because I think back to the porch pod, the almost porch pod. I think we did it from your living room with the porch in the background. I believe I had them at 12 wins. I'm sure the comments will check me. Maybe I had them at 13. I think it was 12. So I have to kind of stand on business here and say yes to 10. But I actually would just say, yeah, I think that's a good bet. You can get value on it at plus money. I think that's a good bet. Plus 120 to win 10 games. The schedule is hard. Nobody is going to argue that. And no, JJ McCarthy's probably not going to look like he did today on August 14th every single Sunday. But I think when you look at the Vikings in the aggregate, the team as a whole, the roster as a whole, and we've been teasing the defense. We're going to talk about the defense. They have so much talent. And really all JJ McCarthy needs to do is be a game manager. And I think they could win 10 games. And I think today showed that he can be more than that at times. There's going to be ups and downs. I think the season probably will look a lot more like the training camp as a whole, the ups, the downs, the good, the bad. It probably won't look lights out like it did every single day or like it did today every single Sunday. But I think even if you're up and down, the roster, the coaching, it equals 10 wins to me. It equals double-digit wins. So FanDuel question of the day, I would take the value on the plus money, and I would say, yeah, bet over the 9.5. That's pretty good to me.
I'm staying at 11. this is the type of day that makes me want to go to 12.
Join me. The water's warm. Go, come on.
I'm staying there. I'm gonna stay at 11 because you know what? After what we saw from JJ McCarthy last year during training camp, I thought that this was what he would look like someday today. And as we saw it and there's an old saying about scouting and development is that it's not linear, right? It's not every single day gets a little bit better. It goes up 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and that's been JJ McCarthy. This was 15 steps forward to have this joint practice on the whole. I mean, if you start doing the math on the whole, he probably completed 80-something% of his passes. I think he was accurate on overall, probably 80-something% of his passes. He looked like a franchise quarterback today. He didn't just look like a game manager. I agree. He looked like a franchise quarterback. And I talk a lot on the show during training camp every year about just the vibe. Like what's the vibe of the team? What's the feeling? Because if it's not going well, it's really hard for everybody to cover up. And we were talking to Jonathan Grenard after practice, and we can transition into the defense now. And Jonathan Grenard has had an intensity about him that I have seen in few other athletes I've ever been around, and even in like a friendly way. But just in the way that he talks about their standard for this year, I think that he sees it. I think that everybody sees it. How much talent is on this roster and the opportunity that's ahead. And he was very jacked up after practice, but he was saying that they have this mentality in their room that it all starts with them in the front seven, and that even when you get a sack, it's not good enough unless you got a strip sack, and then it's probably good enough to their standard. I think Grenard has individually raised the bar for this team, that one person, and this is probably how Baltimore used to feel about like a Ray Lewis, of just somebody whose energy alone raises everybody. And I feel like that's been Jonathan Grenard in this camp. He demolished Will Campbell. I mean, I'm sure that he's going to have a good career and he's a good rookie and everything. He's going to walk out of here going, I got a lot of work to do before I face people like Jonathan Grenard. And the guy I wanted to highlight today, because yesterday I watched all McCarthy, but today I stood in a spot where I could dart my eyes back and forth, 1 rep over here, 1 rep over there. And I noticed Drake May threw a lot underneath, threw a lot off platform, a lot of scrambles, and made some amazing throws, but there weren't that many of them. And a lot of it was just under pressure, total domination from the D-line. But the 2-minute drill, now they end up converting it on a Hail Mary, which was kind of bizarre. But overall, the Vikings defense dominated, except for just one crazy jump ball into double coverage that you wouldn't expect to happen very often.
And quickly, the jump ball and the double coverage, I think in a real game that gets knocked down. I think you don't play that with the same intensity because risking a rolled ankle. Anyway, that's pretty in the weeds. Keep going.
Right. And Josh Metellus kind of did roll his ankle a little bit on that play. So, but anyway, I mean, it was just like kind of a lucky thing that happened from Kayshon Boutte. He made that catch, but the early part was total domination from the D-line, and the guy who was in the backfield was Dallas Turner that I really noticed. And again, when we talk about guys who needed this, guys who needed to come into camp and were swing players for this, like if JJ McCarthy looks lost out there, that's a swing player for the whole vibe of camp. Dallas Turner, if he looks like he hasn't taken any step forward, I think they're going to be pretty disappointed. He's looked like he's taken an enormous step forward. And this is why I was sort of laughing about some of the analysis of his preseason game. Today was what mattered to Dallas Turner, not a game where they're not game planning and you're trying to avoid getting hurt. He was terrific in the Andrew Van Ginkel role. And I did wonder to myself, I'm not going to throw a conspiracy, but I did wonder if they wanted him to get all those reps and said, hey, it's okay, Andrew Van Ginkel, why don't you just chill for these couple of days? We don't want to get you hurt. Why don't we have Dallas Turner take a ton of reps? And he really rose to the challenge. And this is where you start to feel like, can this Vikings defense be that good? I think that as long as that secondary holds up, which was a little suspect at times during these joint practices, they were not flawless, but I think the front seven was more or less flawless. They were in Drake May's face this entire time. And I really came away, when you talk about those win totals, I really came away thinking the Minnesota Vikings are just much better than the New England Patriots.
Yeah, I think it was interesting, and I'll be honest, I watched mostly the offense, mostly JJ McCarthy, the way that joint practices are set up, one field, offense versus defense, Patriots first team defense versus Vikings first team offense, other field, Vikings first team defense, Patriots, whatever. So I spent most of my time with JJ McCarthy, but I would dart my eyes over every so often. Hey, how's it going over there? And I swear, you're not lying. You're not exaggerating. Jonathan Grenard was living in the backfield, so he is. I think you're right. A floor raiser. A guy who can help this team probably reach a new level. And the defense was pretty good last year, but not being satisfied. We talked to him after practice today. More is required is something he came up with, and he's really living that with the way he's kind of carrying himself. But I think when you look at how good this defense can be, it does hinge on other guys. Jonathan Grenard, you're going to get what you get. He's one of the best pass rushers in the league. I think this year he'll probably even take the step of becoming a household name. He's someone who's still flying under the radar, even though he's one of the best defensive players in the league. I think you'll start to know more about who he is this year, at least from a national perspective. But you have to be better than just your best players. And they have guys across the board. Yeah, I think you're right that it's just very definitively clear to me that the Vikings are just better than the Patriots. And it's because of not just the Jonathan Grenards on the defense. It's because of the Dallas Turners. We've talked about how important this training camp was, how impressive he looked at times when it was Vikings on Vikings. But these 2 days were important. How good can you look against another team? Well, I think you can check that box. Dallas Turner, he continues to progress forward. Okay, well, beyond Dallas Turner, what are we talking about? Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, they're good. You know what you're going to get up front. A guy that popped today, Jalen Redmond, an undrafted free agent from last year that I think a lot of people just kind of forgot about when you signed Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave. Well, Jonathan Grenard was talking about Jalen Redmond today, and I think he said something like, I knew he was a dog last year when he got kicked out of practice. But he's a guy who I think adds to the depth. So you start to see, like, it's not just the best players on the defense, it's the depth players on the defense. And I think the same thing can be said about the offense. We spent some time talking about Thayer Thomas and Lucky Jackson. It's just a good team across the board. But I think that is especially evident in the front seven, especially evident in when you can go from Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel to let's sprinkle in Dallas Turner and Gabe Murphy. Well, those edge rushers are pretty elite in my book. And then when you can go from Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, Harrison Phillips up front, and let's mix in a Jalen Redmond, and let's mix in anybody a Tyrion Ingram Dawkins who was popped in camp. Like there are just players in layers through this defense. They're going to be able to stay healthy, stay fresh, and I think you're starting to see glimpses of that in training camp. We'll see if it translates to the field in games, but the talent is just there, and I think that was really on display when you saw them go up against another team and give them fits. It was sometimes in training camp we were saying to ourselves, like, is it going to look like this is the offense going to function? Is JJ McCarthy? And when you see it really applied to another team, when you see the chaos they were giving to Drake May, maybe you start to have a little bit of sympathy for what JJ McCarthy, what Sam Howell, what Brett Rippon, what Max Brosmer have been going through for 3 weeks leading up to these joint practices. But the defense is really good. I think we know that. And I think we know that probably even more after these last 2 days.
Your point about Redmond, I feel like right now the rotation is probably just going to be Hargrave, although they did something interesting today where they had just Hargrave and Allen in, and then in some second team reps, Harrison Phillips was slotting in with the second team, I think to just make sure that he was getting work along with Jalen Redmond. And I actually wondered if they would mix and match that pair if on some, second down and longs where you're just having Hargrave and Allen and then the two edge rushers. There's so much mixing and matching possibilities, but if it's a rundown, then you can have Redmond and Harrison Phillips take the other two off the field, say it's, second down and 5 or something like that, where there's a lot of mix and match opportunities. It was unfortunate that Levi Drake Rodriguez could not participate in this, but I think that there's a 4-man and then Levi Drake is after that, even though he's had a good camp. Redmond is a pro. He's been a pro in another league and shown it, and then he came here last year. And then I think Levi Drake is probably going to work in a little bit less so than Jalen Redmond. But when we talk about this roster, I kind of have been hesitant to go back to the one that I covered and you covered. That was the deepest roster this team has had because they went to the NFC Championship, in recent memory. And once you start making that comparison, it's like, oh, well, they better go to the NFC Championship then. But when I think about the training camp of 2017 and how we left that camp, it's probably the only one that I would say feels like this, where everybody's looking around going, oh my gosh, there is so much talent on this team. We can go position by position by position and go, this guy had a great camp. This guy had a great camp. Even Jeff Okudah, I thought during these days, held his own in that nickel package, which they didn't play as much. We saw a lot of Jay Ward because Harrison Smith was out of these practices. He had an illness, but it's probably just for the better that he doesn't participate in these. So Jay Ward got a lot of work with Theo Jackson, and they were having Josh Metellus play a lot of his up at the line of scrimmage like he often does. But then later they moved him back and they put Okudah on the field. There is a flexibility to this thing that they didn't really have last year, and they've tried to create it last year with some rotation in the front seven, but they just didn't have the bodies to give these totally different looks. And now they do with even just the way that Okudah has played. And I've been thinking about him a lot as in he doesn't have to be perfect. And that's kind of the theme of a lot of the players on defense for me is, well, Allen hasn't been the best run defender recently. Hargrave hasn't been the best run defender recently. And Okudah has had his struggles at times in his career. And they're going to ask more from Isaiah Rodgers. And they're going to ask more from Metellus in deep coverage, which I do have some questions about that in playing the football and his long speed. But there's no player on that list that's just going to have to lock down every number one wide receiver or be the entire run defense by yourself. There's always going to be someone else that they can work in and fill in those issues. And I thought we really saw that in these joint practices with some of the different personnel groupings that they had. And I think even from someone like Van Ginkel, like he's been banged up at times in his career. If that happens, now Dallas Turner comes in, it will be really interesting to see how they mix and match, because you don't want Van Ginkel off the field, but you also don't want him playing 800 snaps again. When we talk about the biggest developments of this training camp, I mean, I just think that a lot of the players we had big questions about on the defensive side have shown us something, whether it's Jalen Redmond, whether it's Dallas Turner, whether it's Theo Jackson, who continues to make plays on the football, Isaiah Rodgers, who I thought had a pretty good joint practice. I mean, all of these guys have kind of been the best versions that they could have hoped for so far. And again, none of this guarantees anything, but walking out of this, they dominated the New England Patriots on both sides of the ball in these joint practices, and we know how serious both coaches take the joint practices and how much work they put into them. You talk about studying film. We know that Vrabel was trying to simulate the Vikings players in practice by putting pennies on the guys and preparing for some of Flores' looks. Like, this actually means something a lot more than the preseason, which is not predictive at all for what's going to happen. And it feels like they're in really good shape. And you go back to that FanDuel question of the day. You're like, if all of the stuff that happened here in these last 2 days happens there in the regular season, they will blow by the FanDuel expectation, and in part because of the defense. But let us get, before we wrap up though, Dane, because we are just watching these guys walk off on cloud nine after these practices. They were so good during these last 2 days. It's funny that, last year they won 14. We didn't really feel that way coming out of Cleveland last year. We were kind of like, their defense can be great. We think Darnold's got chances to go deep, but we'll see. And they end up playing really well. We do need to mention punt returning, kick returning. We did see some of that. It's going to be a big deal. There were a lot of guys practicing kick returning today. I saw Felton and Ty Chandler were the first guys out there. I saw Xavier Scott get back there. We've seen Miles Price. We've seen Silas Bolden. And then on the punt returning side, after practice, I saw Ty Felton taking some, but it's been Bolden. It's been Miles Price. They're going to matter. And everything matters when you're talking about a team with the expectations this high. What do you think happens at the returner positions?
I've been kind of banging the drum for Silas Bolden as the punt returner. So I'm going to just kind of double down right now and say I think he makes the team. I think the UDFA out of Texas, undersized receiver, I think he makes the team because he's the punt returner. I think he will be the guy. He's been getting a lot of the reps in training camp. So I think he will be your starting punt returner week 1 against Chicago. I think Ty Felton will be your starting kick returner. They've been doing, you've seen it pretty much throughout training camp. It's not one guy back there. It's 2 guys back there. I think with the new kickoff rule, they're anticipating kind of angling a kick to kind of short of the goal line and hoping you can kind of pin a team back if you're the kicking team. So you want two guys back there to kind of patrol both sides of the field. I think Ty Felton will be kind of the guy, and if Ty Chandler makes the team, he'll be the other guy back there. If he doesn't, you could see maybe a Xavier Scott as the other guy back there, because if Ty Chandler doesn't make the team, it means Xavier Scott probably did make the team. What I will say is I'm giving myself an out. August 26th, I think, is cut down day. Maybe Silas Bolden makes the team on August 26th, but then maybe there's a surprise cut across the NFL. And maybe one of those surprise cuts happens to be a really good punt returner, or someone who's done it in the past, or even someone like Rondell Moore, who has not done it recently, but has done it earlier in their career. I could see them looking elsewhere for a punt returner just because, and we've talked about this, you want to talk about in the weeds, but the swirling winds of Chicago on Monday Night Football at Soldier Field, where everything wacky happens. Do you want a UDFA back there catching a punt? I don't know. Probably not. So I'm going to give the nod to Silas Bolden right now because he just is the guy. But would it shock me if they went out and went shopping on the open market when there were probably more people available? No, it wouldn't shock me. Does that mean I think they're going to go sign an Odell Beckham because no, I think if they go shopping for another player, it will be someone with a very defined skill set, someone like a Brandon Powell who has done this, who you can trust. But right now, I think Silas Bolden is the leader in the clubhouse. I think it's a big game for him on Saturday and then the following Friday. I think if he performs well, if you see a few punts this weekend and Silas Bolden looks comfortable, maybe that gives him more of a rampway. Maybe that gives him a longer leash. But on the flip side, what if he bobbles one? Well, then maybe you're looking sooner. So long answer, I think Silas Bolden is your punt returner. I think Ty Felton and whoever is RB3 is probably your kick returner.
I think that they have a tendency in the past to let it play out with the players they have and then make a decision. So we saw it with Dalton Reisner, for example, last year, where they let it play out and then they were like, yeah, we better call Dalton Reisner. And I think the same thing goes for the wide receivers. Guys like Thayer Thomas, Lucky Jackson, they're going to get game action, probably a lot of game action, and they have something to prove in this preseason game, which is the next step for all of us, which is, and my final question for you is just what's the number one thing we're looking for in the preseason? I wanted to also mention that, Max Brosmer had a couple more good throws. I thought Sam Howell had some you like, some you didn't like. He had a really nice throw to,
Miles Price.
Miles Price. Yep. Yes, Miles Price, where he got pressure immediately, but he got rid of the football, threw it up and over, dropped it, and I've liked what I've seen from Miles Price. I don't think we should leave him out of the discussion either, that he was a returner at Indiana and has shown some jump to his game as well and has made some plays. He's the one that caught the touchdown from Max Brosmer. For me, that is a number one by far with a bullet. It is, what do these receivers do in this preseason game? And do they do enough to convince the coaching staff and the front office we're good with the group that we have, we don't have to go out and get somebody else? Or will we walk out of it saying, you know what, maybe they need to make a couple of phone calls?
Yeah, if you're taking the receivers, I think that's a good place to start, because how do you separate yourself? If not on the practice field, it's in the games. It's in the games that the head coach doesn't even want to play any of his starters. So you're going to get a ton of reps. And whoever stands out on Saturday against the Patriots, or Friday and Friday against the Tennessee Titans, is probably going to win out in the end, or on the flip side of that, show the front office that we need to go do something. But if you're taking the receivers, I'm taking the quarterbacks. I want to, and I guess they go hand in hand. You need good quarterback play to even get receiver reps. So the receivers probably are invested in how Sam Howell is going to look, and how Brett Rippon's going to look, and how Max Brosmer is going to look. But for me this weekend, I'm giving Sam Howell credit for what he did last weekend. But also I want to see it again. Yes, it's still up and down. Yes, there are still times in practice where I'm like, I don't know if I feel that great about him being one snap away. And then I kind of have to remind myself, nobody feels that good about their backup unless you're one of 5 teams in the league, probably. But I want to see on Saturday, does the offense look good again? Does it look like it can function? Sam Howell is going to get the first kick at the can. JJ McCarthy is not going to play. What does he do with that? Does he build on last week when he was 11 of 13 for 105 yards and consistently moved the ball downfield? So that's what I want to see first and foremost. And then I want to see Max Brosmer. I get Brett Rippon. I understand that. Kevin O'Connell kind of stood on the table today and said, I know his stat line in the preseason game didn't look that good, but if he completes a go ball over the top, we're all talking about it differently. Yeah, that's true. It was a pretty good throw to Jayshon Jones in the preseason game last week. And if he goes for a 30-yard gain, we're probably not looking at Rippon's stat line, which I think was 1 of 4 for like 5 yards and a sack. But I want to see Max Brosmer. No disrespect to Brett Rippon. I don't really care about his reps, though. I want to see, what does the undrafted free agent out of Minnesota look like? Because I think he has an opportunity to be QB3. I think he has an opportunity to make the team. So after Sam Howell, I will be fixated on Max Brosmer this weekend. Is he going to keep putting together tape that makes it so you cannot cut him? It makes it so if you cut him, you're worried about exposing him to waivers. I think he continues to do enough to keep you interested. I thought he got very minimal reps in joint practices because that's how they're set up. It's for JJ McCarthy. It is not for Max Brosmer. But it did not mean he didn't stand out. He had a great throw to Tim Jones yesterday, and he had another good throw to Tim Jones and another one to Jayshon Jones today. He continues to do enough in practice, so I want to see how he looks in the game.
Tim Jones is really
he's someone to watch too.
He's made a case for himself the last couple practices coming out of a preseason game where he had a couple penalties that was maybe regrettable for him. But Xavier Scott also in that backup running back situation, I think it's a very real competition between he and Ty Chandler, or would they potentially keep both of those running backs because Xavier Scott has forced his way, and the backup offensive line we're going to be looking at as well, because Joe Huber coming off of a great game, and Michael Juergens, I think he had a clean 2 practices. We should shout out Michael Juergens. He had a clean 2 practices when it came to snapping the football and running the operation with the second team. So he did a good job there. Needs to carry that over to the next game as well. So there's a ton to look at in this preseason game. And guess who will be there? Dane Mizatani and myself. And we'll be there right after the game. So make sure you're keeping an eye out for that post-game podcast as well. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Dane, this was a really, really fun couple of days. Yeah. Joint practices, we hype them up. And sometimes in years past, it's been like, oh, joint practices. And then you're like, oh, okay, well, man, it's just another practice. That was not the case today. This had all the energy, all the vibe of what everyone hoped it would be at the beginning. And it was a lot of fun to cover. So I will see you again on Saturday and see you all again very soon. There you go. There you go. My conversation with Dane Mizatani from inside TCO Performance Center. Got a few more things to get to as we got some sound from JJ McCarthy, from Kevin O'Connell, and then, of course, I will be very willing to answer your questions. But as I've mentioned many times, this show does have some sponsors, so let's shout out one, ZipRecruiter. I know that a lot of you out there own your own businesses, or you're in a management position where you have a lot of people to hire, and it can be such a headache. You sort through bad resumes, people who aren't qualified, and overlook the best candidates. Well, it's not so tough if you use ZipRecruiter for your hiring needs. Try it right now for free at ZipRecruiter.com/audio. It is so easy that you have to try it. You can use their smart technology to find great candidates quickly, or use the invite to apply button where you reach out to your favorite candidates. So there's lots of ways to make ZipRecruiter work for you. Ditch the other hiring sites and let ZipRecruiter find exactly what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack, great candidate. 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try it for free again. ZipRecruiter.com/audio. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. So, All right. Here is what you missed if you are just getting into the show. JJ McCarthy had an absolutely phenomenal day at Minnesota Vikings training camp. He looked the most in command, the most in control, and the most accurate by far that we have seen him, I think, ever. But, it reminded me of right before last year, his first preseason game, where McCarthy just started to come on. And you felt like, all right, you know what? He's kind of getting this. This kid's coming along. And then, if you guys remember, Kevin O'Connell had talked about at some point that he was about to get more first team reps. He had played so well in practice, and then he had the very good preseason game, and it was just trending all that way for JJ McCarthy. This was better than he looked then. This was more in control. This was more accurate in today's practice. And I started out the press conference by asking Kevin O'Connell about all the passes that he was able to hit today. So here's what Kevin O'Connell had to say. Just what did JJ show you, especially today where he had the sequence where he completed 12 or 13 passes in a row?
See, this is the one time it's good that you guys were keeping some stats. I did not know that. No, I just. I'm being serious right now. You're the first ones to tell me that. It felt like, I thought JJ had a really good day yesterday, but I felt like we came back today with a really good plan, and we were able to do some things that we would do, in a regular season, game planning an opponent, trying to do some things that make sense from a rhythm, timing, spacing standpoint. But that's all on the players to then absorb that, and specifically JJ to go out there and execute the way he did. It felt decisive. It felt incredibly, incredible amount of conviction to some of the decisions he made, location of the football, and a lot to build on.
You mentioned location. Is that the best he's thrown the ball since camp began?
Yeah, I think, everything happens faster in the red zone. So I think there's going to be some, throws where maybe you got to squeeze it in a window, put it away from a defender one way or the other. But then there was also some throws where he threw it up and over, some guys, and found the open grass, with the ability to throw the football in some different ways. All things we've been working on, all things he's talented and capable of doing. But to do it in this setting should give him some confidence moving forward.
Kevin O'Connell there using some really great descriptive words, decisive and conviction. I think the most impressive part of what JJ McCarthy was able to do today was really make a lot of different types of throws. You heard Kevin O'Connell allude to it there, where it wasn't just, he ripped passes that were 15-yard ins. And I felt like a lot of training camp, I've been coming out of practices saying, hey, the 15-yard dig route, he's been really great at. And the touch pass has been flying over people's heads. But these one routes have been really good. And these one types of passes have been really good. But today, it was not just that. There was an outbreaking route to TJ Hawkinson where he showed the anticipation that we've been talking about, and the anticipation that I thought he showed during the preseason game with the deep out to Jordan Addison, where Addison kind of got held up at the top of the route and had to dive for the ball. But I was just watching JT O'Sullivan's recap of the preseason game for JJ McCarthy, which is definitely over at the QB school worth a watch. And he pointed out that McCarthy raises his arm to throw that ball about 25 yards and really drive that ball before Addison gets out of his break. And there were throws like that today, kind of all over the field, but one specifically stood out to me where Hawkinson was running an out route and he comes up. I'm standing in the end zone, so I can't tell you exactly how many yards. I'm going to say 12 to 15 yards. And Hawkinson gives a little shake, breaks to the outside, and the ball is just there, and it leads him forward to the football. And there were just a lot of throws that were like that today where it needed to be in an exact spot. The touchdown he threw in the 2-minute drill, it needed to be in an exact spot, and he let it loose, and Addison goes down, and he ends up getting it. I mean, it was just a very, very, very good performance for JJ McCarthy, but I don't think that that happens if the offensive line hadn't had a much better day today, which gave him time to throw and he could be patient and wait for some of those routes to develop. But then when things broke down in the 2-minute drill, he took off and he ends up getting a big gain and a first down that set up the touchdown. So there was just a lot of stuff from JJ McCarthy that I felt like was the high level, the things that they've been talking about. Hey, we're working on this. We're working on this. And what I really like as far as an evaluation tool about the joint practices is throughout training camp, there's so many days. And some days they go out there and they go, we're going to work on this really specific thing today. And that's what we're focused on. And if it's bad, then it's bad. And we're going to keep fighting through it because we need to do it as part of our offense. Okay. So we'll sit on the sideline and we'll see something going bad and we'll be like, this is a bad day of practice for JJ McCarthy. But they might have been working on something specifically in that day. During the joint practices, they're trying to win. They were trying to beat the New England Patriots on every 7-on-7, every 11-on-11, every single 2-minute drill. Like they're trying to outperform to the point where JJ McCarthy was actually watching tape of the first day's practice to get a sense for how the Patriots were playing him because he didn't get much out of the preseason game for their defensive structures. So he came out and he talked about this afterward where he came out prepared for this practice, prepared for the type of defense they were going to play, and then executed time and time again. And I was having a conversation with Stephen Ruiz from The Ringer. We were standing together and watching it, and we were talking about trying to figure out what JJ McCarthy's ceiling might be in this offense if he plays like this. And I think the ceiling is you're one of the best teams in the NFL if he can play the way that he did during the joint practices. I would even put them together. The total grade for me would be an A for JJ McCarthy. I gave him a B plus yesterday. I thought it was pretty good. He admitted to missing a couple of throws yesterday. He didn't miss throws today. He was on point. So if this was some sort of if you called it like a game, like 4 quarters of situations from yesterday to today, put them together, you've got one full game's worth of throws. That would have been a winning day for the Minnesota Vikings. And, not everybody, I see you guys have lots of comments always on different media personalities. You know, my thing on the show. Sometimes national TV hosts that troll about quarterbacks I watch every day do get under my skin. But here's what I'll give credit to. Anybody who comes out to actually watch and actually talk to people about this quarterback and about this team, I'm going to give credit to. That's why you see Robert Mays show up on this show, because Robert has many times come out to practice and made the effort to come see what the Vikings are about and watch practice and talk to people. So Stephen Ruiz, you might not love some of his opinions on quarterbacks, but he was there standing next to me watching the practice, and we're talking about it, and he's watching JJ go through what he's going through, and then he's going to go back and do his quarterback analysis after actually seeing the quarterback at practice. And I know some of you have pointed out Diana Rossini was here as well, and credit to Diana Rossini and her show for coming out, sitting down with Kevin O'Connell and watching practice and seeing what JJ McCarthy looks like in person, because that's how you really figure it out. You don't figure it out from grainy camp videos or whatever that's taken from the stands. You don't figure it out from one random person telling you something. Oh, well, I heard this, or I think that, or whatever. You figure it out by going and being there and really talking to people and really seeing what's going on. So with JJ McCarthy, the big picture here is that there's been days where it hasn't been impressive. There's been days where it's been very impressive. But I think the wheel has always been turning toward getting better and better and better. And even if there's a step back, or even if, just for example, in the preseason game, even if there's a missed throw or something like that, he's taken these things and he's always improved. And think about yesterday where we did the live stream conversation. I was talking about some of the inaccuracy and just saying like, hey, this might be something that happens with him throughout the season where he might, overthrow a pass and he might miss, something inaccurately because he's still working on a lot of these different things. But then he comes out the next day and the same throws that he missed, he ends up hitting. And you just go, this is JJ McCarthy. And let's not forget, sometimes McCarthy is talked about almost like he's some sort of big swing, like let's just take a chance on this try hard kid or something. Like JJ McCarthy is a 5-star prospect, national champion in high school, Michigan starting quarterback at 19 and 20 years old, national champion, first round draft pick with a year of development under his belt mentally. This is somebody who's supposed to have a really high ceiling. He did throw the hardest football at the combine. He did run the fastest like the physical tools here sometimes are talked about with him as if it's like, oh, well, this game manager kid, we'll see if he can just sort of try his way through or heart and hustle his way through. Like, no, this is a first round draft pick who was taken ahead of Bo Nix and right next to Michael Penix in a draft class that's turned out to be terrific. This is where you expected him to be. This is the bet that the Vikings made, is that today he would look like this against the New England Patriots. And you could just sense it as the guys were coming off the field. We talked to Grenard, we talked to obviously McCarthy and Kevin O'Connell and a number of other players, Jonathan Allen. The defense feels it too. They stand there and they watch JJ McCarthy lead that 2-minute drive. And what they know is if he does that, we're going to do our thing. And this is going to be a pretty darn good football team. So I feel like this was another one of those, the way that Kevin O'Connell has talked about it is checkpoints. To me, it's the same sort of thing. Like you have a checklist of what did you want to see and when from JJ McCarthy. So if he has a non-padded practice where he's throwing inaccurately on the 4th day of training camp, as you guys have watched the show every day know, I'm saying, okay, it wasn't a great day. Here's the details. Here's what he's going to have to work on. But we're not doing this thing where we try to call it the 3rd day into camp. And this is why, because of the amount of development and gains that McCarthy has made. And for all intents and purposes, this is the end of training camp. And now they begin looking at week 1 with McCarthy in a very good and a very confident space. Now, there are some other things that I want to talk about. You guys have mentioned Dallas Turner a couple times. And just like with Diana Rossini or just like Steven Ruiz or whoever else, you guys might have opinions on, certain talk hosts and things that different people say. You know that these are people I know. So I'm not going to say, well, this person is this or this person is that. I'm only going to ever tell you what I see, okay? What I saw today out of Dallas Turner was a guy who wanted to show something. Do I know that that's going to translate to 10 sacks? Of course I don't. In the same way that I don't know if JJ McCarthy's great last 2 days are going to translate. All I know is that it's what you wanted to see. That Dallas Turner, when he came out today in the 2-minute drill, rocketed by the right tackle of the New England Patriots for a sack. And what I'm talking about is Drake May takes the snap, takes a step to throw the football, and they call the play because Dallas Turner got there so quickly. And I know that he's going to be a guy that is in the spotlight and is going to get a lot of discussion with every single game. If he doesn't have 3 sacks in the first game, there's going to be criticism and everything else. But he played a certain role on the team last year. They finished in the top 5 as a defense. His role is going to elevate, and they are going to need him to take steps forward as a defense to be better than they were last year to face the competition they're going against this year. And what I've seen from him in training camp, and I'm only talking about training camp, and you guys like to get into, well, is this person saying that because they know something or whatever? And all I've heard about Dallas Turner from Jonathan Grenard, from Jonathan Allen today, and all I've seen from Dallas Turner is growth. And Dallas himself, who I spoke to early in camp about his approach this year. He took the right steps this offseason by working out with Jonathan Grenard. He was the first person back with Grenard in the building to start the offseason. And I think that he's learned a ton and has made physical developments, mental developments, and looks like he can be an impact player. Those are my observations about Dallas Turner. Again, no guarantees for anybody. Those are my observations about him. And the defensive line just dominated this whole thing. And it's funny too, because I felt like last night there was a lot of, hey, was JJ better than Drake May? And a Patriots podcast said Drake May was better and things. And look, I don't know. What I know about Drake May, and I was able to watch a lot of the defense today. I know you guys asked for that, so I stood in a spot where I could see both. I just put one eye to the right and one eye to the left. No, luckily it would be like a rep over here, and then I could turn back, rep over there, and still see everything. My observation about Drake May is that he is off the bus incredibly impressive. I mean, he's a huge guy, and that some of the throws that he made today, just whoa. I mean, like tight windows or dropping it in the bucket or jump throwing. Like he did a couple of jump throws over, rolling out or whatever. But the thing is that Drake May doesn't have a very good supporting cast. And there is some concern, I guess, now from the Patriots with their media talking about whether Stephon Diggs is going to be ready for the start of the season because of his lack of participation in some of the drills today. So I don't know exactly where that's going to be at for him. Kayshon Boutte and Mac Hollins were guys that were getting a lot of targets. Their offensive line is not that great. But what I thought you saw from the Vikings defense is making them look not great. And all those times that we've heard time and time again about, hey, it's harder to go against Flores defense than somebody else. McCarthy made that look right. McCarthy made that look right today, that it was easier for him to go against the Patriots defense than Brian Flores. So whether the defense's performance as a whole is going to be more important to me than whether Dallas Turner gets X number of sacks, because I tend to evaluate the football team on their wins and losses rather than how many draft hits they get. But I know some people do it differently. I just look at what Dallas Turner has brought early on, and these two practices were huge for him because Van Ginkel was out. So Turner got a ton of work, ton of experience, and had a lot of really good reps. The thing is, I mean, on the other side, you're seeing Jonathan Grenard have one of the best training camps I've ever seen a defensive end have. 2017 Everson Griffin looked like this, just a man on a mission, and Grenard looked that way too. This was domination from the Vikings overall. I mean, there were some great plays by Drake May. There were some good catches that they had. And actually, who looked really good was Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs had a pretty darn good day for the New England Patriots with their second team. And I would say there were a few reps from the second team secondary where I kind of went, ooh, with someone like Zamiah Vaughn, there's still going to be some work that has to happen there, even though I think he's got a good chance to make the team. There was a pass breakup, a nice play by Mekhi Blackman. Maybe he could have picked it off, but he broke up a play. And I saw that there was a video. See, here's the thing about videos from training camp and these joint practices. And you guys were talking about a video of Diggs cooking Jeff Okudah. I mean, Diggs has cooked a lot of people. So that's going to happen. But especially if they're doing the one-on-ones, I mean, the corners get cooked almost every time when they're doing the one-on-ones with wide receivers. Jordan Addison's won like every single rep. That's not usually how football works as a whole. But, it's definitely something to keep watching. But through these joint practices, Okudah took all the work. And I also saw a lot of Josh Metellus in different places, which was interesting. Jay Ward got a lot of work in these joint practices. And I think that was probably good for his development because Harrison Smith was not active during these two practices. So also wanted to bring you a couple of quotes, though, from JJ McCarthy. We have talked about all the different plays that he made, and Dane Mizutani estimating that he had 15 good throws today. That might be a little on the high side, but Dane asked JJ after practice about his favorite throw of the day.
JJ, on that note, is there a throw from today that you're most proud of?
Throw from today. It was nice to hit Aaron down the field, that's for sure. There was a little pocket movement before that. But I think, just closing it out with JA on a little post in the end zone, that was, I felt like the location was where I wanted it to be, but that was one of those throws where I learned a lot from, just the feeling the pocket and, manipulating my arm. Would like it a little bit higher, but, he made a great catch and a great play. But yeah, there's a lot of good ones out there. The one to Jordan in the red zone, a little layer ball over the corner. That was something that I was working on a lot this offseason. So, but the guys made the catches, they got open, and it was a lot of fun today.
I like how he said there were a lot of them out there today, and all of us probably went, yeah, there absolutely were. So the 2-minute throw that I've mentioned multiple times, because this is just something where every time they go into the 2-minute drill, I mean, I'm getting out my notebook, which is just my phone, and I'm staring, I'm looking, like, I'm ready. Like, I want to see everything that happens here. And McCarthy has succeeded on almost every one of their 2-minute drills in this offseason. And then to do it again today with such a great throw and some good management as well of the pocket was very impressive. So I asked him about that after practice.
Last couple for JJ, success in the 2-minute drill and both the last couple of days. So what do you think is the key to executing those drills successfully?
The mentality, the different mindset you have to step into. But I feel like, just treating it like it's a game. Like, these are valuable reps. Kind of going back to your question, Judd. Just being able to put yourself in that uncomfortable situation, go out there and execute the simple things. Because, the noise could get loud. You could be thinking, I got to make this play right here. But, one of Coach McCown's favorite plays is when we got 7 up, I made a protection call, rolled out, threw it away, saved time. Like, little stuff like that is kind of what makes or breaks a 2-minute drive and the momentum. So, yeah, it's just, keeping level head and just focusing on the little details and going out there and executing each play.
When it comes to McCarthy, there's some things about the pre-draft reports that I haven't really fully understood. I mean, arm strength questions from day one of rookie camp, I never really understood. Like, I don't see where that comes from because the velocity on this football is good. But the pre-draft reports that talked about him as having a great mind for the game and really understanding how to run an offense. And think about being taught by Jim Harbaugh first and then Kevin O'Connell, guys who have had a ton of success teaching quarterbacks and elevating quarterbacks, right? He looks to me in those 2-minute situations like, yes, he keeps his head on the same way he did Michigan versus Alabama and key drives in that game. But I also think that you can be calmer when you know what you're seeing and what you're calling, that your anxiety and heart rate is not elevated. So I like to watch these chess tournaments, and some of the chess tournaments, they'll put a heart monitor on the player. And at the beginning of the game, when they've seen everything a million times before and they're just starting off kind of on autopilot because they know all the moves at the beginning of the game, their heart rates are perfectly calm. But then as things get more complicated, that's when the stress rises and the preparation for JJ McCarthy and the command of the offense. TJ Hawkinson said yesterday that it was really impressive to see how fast it all happened, because it feels slow sometimes on TV and in the press box where you're looking around and, all right, they challenged a play and now we got a timeout or a fan on the field or whatever, right? And you're just waiting for something to happen. But when it's really happening, when you're really in those headsets, like 30 seconds or whatever is pretty quick. Calls coming in, everybody's looking at you. You got to spit it back out. You got to tell everybody where they got to go. And if someone's lined up wrong, you better have them in the right spot and you got to get that snap off. And the clock doesn't wait for anybody. So to see his execution in 2-minute, where he's not running out of time, he's not looking around confused, he's decisive in his throws. This is the stuff you're looking for from a first-round quarterback who's going to command a really good team. Something that you guys have asked about that I don't have a great answer for right now is about the severity of Jalen Naylor's injury. So Naylor had a hand injury and left practice today, which made it even more impressive, by the way, that JJ McCarthy did not have his starting wide receiver, who's wide receiver 2. And a big credit to Thayer Thomas for coming in, knowing the offense, where he was supposed to be, making plays. I saw somebody else in the chat had the same comp as me, as a BC Johnson, of someone who has enough talent to make plays, catches everything his way, smart kid, but doesn't have any physical tool that's going to make him jump off the page. Lucky Jackson is kind of the same way. They've got these smart wide receivers who know where they're supposed to be. But if Jalen Naylor's injury is at all serious, and again, I don't know if it is, I was not told anything special, and Kevin O'Connell said, I think that it was more of a precaution, but we're never quite sure about that. The Justin Jefferson precautionary hamstring injury has kept him out for all of training camp. So you can never really get a sense right away, how long is this going to keep somebody out? But if Jalen Naylor is injured and has to miss any sort of time, then I think that they do have to look somewhere else. As impressive at times as the different receivers have been, Lucky Jackson, he was on this show, he's had a great camp, and everybody loves that story. And the same thing for Thayer Thomas. Like, they keep these guys for a reason. They don't keep them just for the vibes. They keep them because they think they might need to use them someday. That's why they keep a Lucky Jackson and a Thayer Thomas. At the same time, an Odell Beckham Jr. is out there and he's looking for a job, and Kevin O'Connell knows him and was his offensive coordinator with the Los Angeles Rams. Is that connection enough? Now, there's never been any conversation about OBJ and the Vikings as far as I've seen. I don't think there's been any reports or any tweets or any visits or anything like that. But this situation with wide receiver is starting to remind me a little bit of cornerback last year, where they do have to make a last second type of move. And if Naylor is even going to miss 1 week, and you guys are mentioning, Gabe Davis, Amari Cooper, I don't know where any of those guys are at. Does Amari Cooper want to play? Where is Gabe Davis at physically? He was injured last year. Like, where's he going to be at? So they have a really, really good set of weapons with Addison playing the role of Justin Jefferson. Hawkinson has been all over the place. The running backs are catching passes, and the other guys are just doing what's necessary. But at some point, if you lose Naylor, who knows the offense inside and out, is at least capable. I don't think he ever sets anybody on fire as far as how exciting he is. He's not mind-blowingly large. He is very fast. He's hit on some big plays down the field. He's had some drops down the field. Like, he is a serviceable wide receiver for a couple games. But if you miss him and then you drop down to two guys who haven't played, and then Ty Felton, who also, hasn't played and hasn't taken a lot of first team reps in this training camp, then you are talking about going out and looking for some other option. And, I'll keep saying it that at first, and I don't disagree, Steven, that OBJ has not looked like his old self. And that's happened to a lot of great wide receivers over the years, where they try to hang on for 1 or 2 more years and it's just not there. But I got to tell you, like, the Adam Thielen idea just became less crazy today. Adam Thielen still played pretty well when it came to last season, was banged up a little bit, but still is a veteran wide receiver. And the price might not be very high if Carolina's looking to move on and just get anything for him. If Naylor is banged up, then that might be a direction that they want to go, is to give Carolina a call and see if Adam Thielen could come back. He's going to be reliable. He's going to catch the ball when it comes his way. He's going to block when he's asked to block. He's going to pick up the offense. And when it comes to Naylor, every deep receiver who's not Deshaun Jackson drops the ball. Every pure deep wide receiver has that happen. They could also look into bringing back Brandon Powell if he still wants to play. KJ Osborne, as you guys have mentioned, might get cut. Like, there's a number of potential options out there. And I agree, Rach, that you're right. Like, why would Carolina trade Thielen? I think the only reason why Carolina would trade Thielen is if they just really like what they've got from Tetero and McMillan, and the guy Coker is there, and Xavier Legette. And if they just feel like Thielen doesn't really fit into that mix very well and are looking to play their younger players. Now, I'm on your side. If I was Carolina, I don't think I would do this. I would just rather have 4 good wide receivers. But if they've got somebody else developing, if they've got somebody else who's in the pipeline, then I could see Carolina being interested And until this moment, until Naylor got hurt today, I was more in the camp of, look, it's 3 games. So just, get through 3 games. And then if somebody gets hurt, like Lucky Jackson's development has been really good. And I've liked what I've seen from Felton coming along recently. I think he's played better. They've got some, other guys like Thayer Time. Like you could fill in that spot for a day. But if you're talking about Naylor being out, and I'm not reporting that, I'm not saying that, but if there is some issue where he's banged up going into the regular season, and we'll just have to see when we come back out to, camp next week, then they would, I think, have to start making a phone call, and they should still consider it anyway. I saw enough of the offense succeeding right now that I don't think that they need to do that if Naylor is healthy, because McCarthy looks confident. He looks like he's on the same page with these other wide receivers. I don't feel like they have to sign an OBJ. I don't feel like they have to trade for a Thielen. But in the situation that Naylor is hurt more seriously, because they don't have to put out an injury report in the preseason or anything like that. So if that is the case, then I think that Adam Thielen does make sense. And, of course, I know some of you are saying, well, he's cooked and whatever. Here's kind of the point is Adam Thielen still had a fairly good year last year. He still catches the ball extremely well. He still can create a little bit of separation, and you're not asking him to be wide receiver 1. There's a guy named Justin Jefferson who would be wide receiver 1. If you're talking about whether I would trust Thielen more than guys who have never played before that were on the practice squad, I think we're talking about, 2 very different things there, even where Thielen is at in his career. I agree he could be a good red zone threat. I think more underneath stuff, but he caught the football last year from Bryce Young. And when he was in the lineup, Bryce Young found him quite a few times. So yes, Aaron, I think Powell makes sense. What I believe the Vikings will do with the wide receiver situation, and this really depends on Naylor's health. If they think he's going to be fine, what I think that they will do is they will they'll go back and they'll look at all the tape from these last 2 days, and they will go and they'll watch this preseason game, and they'll make a decision. Like, are we going to go out and get someone else, or are we going to roll with what we have? Because I think Rondale Moore made this easier because, Rondale, even though he is known as a short wide receiver and a quick kind of underneath guy, Rondale was running the whole route tree. He was becoming more of a complete wide receiver even in Arizona, and then was starting to do a lot of the complete wide receiver stuff for the Vikings. And I think they would have felt pretty darn comfortable with Lucky Jackson, Rondale Moore sort of switching in and out. Maybe you throw in Ty Felton a little bit as an option for wide receiver 3. But Moore now being off the table, that's where it's Lucky Jackson, Thayer Thomas, and then Ty Felton, and you feel like you've got nothing proven there whatsoever. That's where going after an Adam Thielen, it does feel almost cliche. It does feel almost corny to talk about. And that was my initial thought when it was brought up, that idea. I was like, oh, isn't that kind of cheesy to go after the old Viking? But now with Naylor a little banged up and they're having to put in guys who have never played games before, that's where that conversation doesn't sound so crazy. And even though you guys are saying, hey, he's cooked or whatever, which, he's not the same Adam Thielen he was in 2017, that's for sure. But let's assess the other options. Odell Beckham, who hasn't played really since 2021. Is that right? Not like truly played and made an impact. That's a long time. Or you're talking about Gabe Davis, who had a pretty terrible year last year. Brandon Powell, who didn't make much of an impact. I mean, it's not like there's a lot of great. You guys are joking about Leo Lewis and Jake Reed in the comments. Like, Jake Reed's not available to go get right now to help get you through a couple weeks. So I do think that conversation gets ramped up. Aaron, I believe Lucky Jackson will play in the game. I think he still needs to. But if they don't play him, it's probably a sign, probably a good sign. If they don't play Lucky Jackson, it probably means that they want to see everybody else. And Jayshon Jones made a couple catches. I think that there's a lot there to work with these guys who are unproven, but still, it's not as sure of a thing as players who have been around for a long time and are as proven as Adam Thielen. So if they sent, now what it would have cost, I mean, I think you're talking about like a 6th round pick or something, right? Like it's not going to be much. If they're just shopping him out there, who wants Adam Thielen? You're probably offering him a 6th round pick. They probably want a 5th. Maybe you could throw in a swap somewhere else. It can't be much. And it might depend on, the contract, which I think is very reasonable with Carolina at this situation. And Steven, you mentioned Tim Jones. Tim Jones has made quite a case for himself over the last couple days, but we do have to keep in mind, and Tim Jones he's made some really nice catches. He has been in the league before. I also think that, we're talking about catching passes from Max Brosmer with the 3rd team. And he's got to do it in the game. He's got to do it a lot more to show that he's somebody they can really trust, because he doesn't really have a sample size of being a significant wide receiver in the league either. And it's not like he was playing for a good team before. I've been impressed. And I think if I'm doing a 53, that special teams position, the fact that he can come in and play a little bit, the Trent Sherfield spot, he could potentially do that. But if we're talking about someone who can really slot in and be a difference maker, just to some extent, just play the Jalen Naylor role, then I think you have to probably look elsewhere. And I don't know, when somebody's not signed right now, that usually means health is an issue. Like when you talk about Gabe Davis, I mean, Gabe Davis has enough of a career in his history that he should be on a team right now. And you're right. Bloody Soup. That's an interesting name. Very football-y name, that they will play a lot of 2 tight ends. And they were doing that during these joint practices. They were putting out a lot of Josh Oliver and TJ Hawkinson, but you can't do it all the time. And, when it comes to Ty Felton, I just feel like Ty Felton needs more development. He's been coming along, but he needs more development, and he will eventually get there because he strikes me as a guy who's motivated. He's got the physical skill. He's made some very nice plays. You're going to see him as a kick returner, but as of right now, it feels like a lot to ask, because Lucky Jackson and Thayer Thomas, those guys are like 27, 26 years old. They've been developing for years behind the scenes. It would just be a lot to ask in this complicated of a system. It took Jalen Naylor a few years to get it down, to come in and then have to take on a role like that. Dystopian Utopia, how did Xavier Scott look? He was back there doing some kick returning. I'm intrigued. I want to see if he actually gets to have some kick returns in the game. Those kick returns are going to be big. I mean, kick and punt returns, I'm going to be really dialed in when it comes to those kick and punt returns. But Scott had a big play. I'm actually not sure. From my angle, I couldn't tell if it was a screen or a run, but he had a big play today. Looked really good. Had a celebration around him when he got back, but those guys weren't getting a lot of action. So when you ask about like the 2nd teamers, 3rd teamers, or guys who mix in, not getting, the 2nd team got some, but this was a first team. Like that's most of the reps that were happening out there. I did think Sam Howell continued to look like a backup quarterback who can make some plays. And talk about turning a corner, I think that Howell has turned a corner. Now, he hasn't turned a corner onto somebody that I think could win 10 games for this team if they lost JJ McCarthy, but I think he's turned a corner into, like this is what Nick Mullins would look like, or this is what Sean Hill would look like, backup quarterbacks who you could trust for a couple games and it would be fine. As far as the punting, there was not a lot of punting that went on. If I had to guess, I'm going to say Saturday afternoon, there will be a lot of punting between the Vikings and the Patriots based on who is going to end up playing. But, Ty Chandler was another guy who was out back there kick returning. I don't know where they're at with that competition, because Chandler's still getting a fair number of reps and Scott's getting a lot of reps, and maybe there's a way that they could work something out to keep both of them if they want to, because Chandler has more experience. Scott has no experience whatsoever. Maybe they don't want him to be the next man up just yet, even if they really like what they've seen. But maybe the writing has been on the wall a little bit. I don't think it's quite something we can conflate with Asamoah. If I'm doing my 53 based on how they've played in camp, I'm leaning Xavier Scott. He's had a lot more big plays than Ty Chandler, and he catches the ball well. But with Asamoah from day one, it was Kobe King ahead of him. He was never in that conversation, it seemed like. In fact, he's never been in the conversation since Brian Flores got here. I mean, truly hasn't been. It's been kind of remarkable, actually, how little Brian Asamoah was ever on defense. They went out and signed Anthony Barr one time to play a handful of snaps so they didn't have to play Brian Asamoah. So I don't think it's quite been like that with Ty Chandler. And when they were doing, just for example, when they were doing the number one kickoff unit, it was Ty Felton and Ty Chandler. So if they think that he can be that number two returner, that spot's going to get the ball. And maybe they want to have him, and maybe they want to have Xavier Scott as well. But sometimes we also worry a little bit too much when it comes to, the poaching. Like, we've liked Xavier Scott, but I mean, is our other team saying, let's get rid of our guy to bring in Xavier Scott off of the Vikings team? I don't know. Maybe if he really dominates, but I think there's still most of the time, even if you love a guy and your local media has been all over some guy, he's been great in the preseason, most of the time they still end up getting through waivers and ending up on your practice squad. That may factor in the percentage chance that Xavier Scott makes the team. Bob with the super chat. Thank you so much, Bob. Says, I've seen a lot of alarm bells around Addison's 3 games, but can we take a breath and remember Justin Jefferson will be stepping back in? Side note, has Jackson's pass blocking been progressing? So, of course, you're right. I mean, last year, their plan without Addison, when he got hurt in week 1, was to throw a 97-yard touchdown to Justin Jefferson. And then they sprinkled in every other receiver. It was Brandon Powell had a couple catches. It was Trent Sherfield had a catch. It was Johnny Munt. It was Josh Oliver. It was Aaron Jones. It was right. So they did a really good job of mixing and matching when it came to the other guys last year. And they could do the same thing here. But at the same time, if Naylor is banged up, and that's where I would say there's some alarm bells. If Naylor is banged up, then you're talking about your number 2 wide receiver has never been in a game. I mean, that right there is something to be nervous about. And this is the Lucky Jackson show, right? I mean, this is the show that he comes on. This is, somebody that I've followed his career since the XFL. So to see him come along like this, but still that's something that would fall under the category of making you nervous, is having to put out there a guy who's never done it before. And then the next man up has also never done it before, no matter who the next man up is. That's where you start thinking about going and getting somebody else. But if Naylor is fine next week, he's back at practice, then I don't think that they necessarily have to do something. They still could, but I'd like to see them just evaluate everybody else and then decide. When it comes to, let's see, what was the question there? Oh, David, thank you very much. When it comes to the super chat, says, has anyone considered if JJ is going to take time off for the birth of his kid? Oh, I have no idea, David. I would guess, knowing football people, that the answer would be no. I don't think so. I don't think so. Maybe a day. I don't know, but probably not. I mean, everybody has been there in the National Football League at one time or another. I remember Everson Griffin. Everson Griffin was in 2017. No, was it 16? 17? I think maybe it was 17. Yeah, I guess it might have been 17, where he was in Detroit and he wrote something like, I had a baby today on his shirt or something like that. So, that's the nature of the beast. Is that usually you got to play when you got to play, and maybe they'll time it out. Kevin O'Connell, I think in his first year, his wife had a kid and they kind of timed it out nicely. I actually don't know what date cut down day is. Maybe somebody can Google what date it is, because it's usually, they've changed this over the year. Somebody could just tell me in the chat what day it is. How did Naylor hurt his hand? I didn't see what happened. He went down for a catch and then dropped it and then was not back in practice. And I wondered at first, like, oh, did they just decide they wanted to see some Thayer Jackson? But then, you know, he didn't come back. I'm sorry, Thayer Thomas. I put those two guys together. Some Thayer Thomas, and then he didn't come back the rest of practice. And then after, it was like, okay, his hand was in a wrap. So that's how we figured that out. Metellus did get banged up, but that did not look too serious to me. It was kind of like a go up and get it play, and he came down a little bit hard. And then it looked like his shoulder at first, the way he was holding the shoulder, but they also kind of looked at his ankle. He's just been a little dinged up during this training camp, and maybe that's not ideal, but I don't think it was serious. I saw Josh after practice walking around, dapping people up, smile on his face. So usually that would be an indicator that it's not too serious. Otherwise, he would have gone right back to the training room. Naylor dropped a pass, then came up lame. We call that at the Xavier Rhodes. Yeah, since he missed the rest of practice, I don't think we could put that on him, but that was a motif for a while for sure. How's the defensive backs been looking? I thought today that the front seven was great and the defensive backs did not have as good of a day as the front seven. Now, the front seven has been phenomenal in these joint practices. There were some completions against them. There was a jump ball to Mac Hollins, who's like 6'4", and he went up and got it kind of, I think it might have been over Metellus. They made the incredible catch at the end of practice where May just threw up a Hail Mary and they went up and went and grabbed it. Keyshawn Booty over Metellus and somebody else, another corner. If there is one thing that is still hovering over this team. Now, remember, like Drake May is a top 3 drafted quarterback, and he's got a huge arm, and he's going to make plays in practice too. They weren't going to just shut out Drake May. And okay, August 26th. Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you very much. That is when it is. So we got 12 more days, 11 more days, kind of, and 2 more preseason games for them to watch and assess. And I believe it was when they signed Stephon Gilmore. You guys can correct me on this. I think it was something like August, I want to say 20th, 21st, 22nd, somewhere in that range. So there's still some time that they can go out and get a wide receiver and plug him in. If it's a veteran, usually that can work out okay, just like Stephon Gilmore last year, even if it's the late ad. But going back to the defensive backs, I would say that they were the only ones, and this isn't to say they were bad because the Vikings defense definitely won. They were the only ones at times when I was looking over that I thought, oh, May made a really good throw there. There was one play where Dobbs was in and it was the backup defensive backs and they kind of got fooled on a play and left a receiver wide open for a touchdown. I saw, a handful of receiver celebrations against the Vikings secondary, and it remains a question mark. Coming out of this, I've felt pretty darn good about Isaiah Rodgers. I will kind of hold on to some skepticism about Jeff Okudah. I think he's been a great story so far. We always like the redemption story. I think he's played well so far in training camp. I can't say I saw every single rep of his, but I think that he has had a very good camp overall. But he is somebody you're still asking questions about. And Bran, he's not going to be the second corner. That's going to be Isaiah Rodgers, and it's going to be Byron Murphy. And Murphy, we know, has been really good so far in training camp. He's been really good as a Minnesota Viking. He's elevated his game under Brian Flores. He's a great fit for Flores. Really smart, tough, all those things that they talk about all the time inside the building, all that sort of stuff. But, with Isaiah Rodgers, his sample size is small. And how much are you going to play Okudah is a question for me. And one of the things I think that Flores is really good at is, and we saw this last year with both Shaq Griffin and Stephon Gilmore, that they were, I think, used in a way that fit them. So Shaq Griffin, they played a little more man coverage. And you can look at the data on this, that they used more man coverage because that was kind of his thing. But with Stephon Gilmore, he was one of the lowest in the league. So I think with Okudah, they can try to set it up to where he's playing a lot of cover 2, and the cover 2 corner, just to kind of paint a picture of what this could look like, the cover 2 corner sort of hangs around over in his area in a zone and then waits. If it's a short route, he's going to stay there. If it's a long route, he's going to let the safety take it and drift back underneath and then read what's in front of him and go make tackles. If that's how they're going to use Jeff Okudah, which I've seen a lot of in these cover 2 kind of defenses, I think he's really good at chasing people down. He's really good at making tackles. They can blitz him off the edge occasionally. And you're kind of talking about like trying to survive those reps and play him to his strengths while he's out there and then get back to having, you know, the 3 safeties. And that's where I've thought Theo Jackson, if Theo Jackson doesn't turn out to be a good player, it will be just a huge shock, because at every turn, Theo Jackson's just good. He makes plays in games. He makes plays in practice. He seems to know where he's supposed to be. He's got good speed. He's got good hands. I mean, he was a draft pick. It's not like he's a totally random guy. And when we talk about all this, the draft stuff, it's like, do we get to count Theo Jackson since they identified him in that draft and someone else got him, but then they picked him up and he's been good? Like, does he count? Can we count him as a draft pick? How's the draft record look if we count Theo Jackson? Like, I don't know, maybe a little better. But, snark aside, Theo Jackson, I think, has had a really good training camp. I'm a little bit concerned about Metellus being banged up from the beginning of camp, missing some time when he's got to play a different role. You're always talking about, Harrison Smith and age and what that's going to look like. I think that Harrison Smith ages super well, as we've already seen, because he doesn't win with pure speed. But it's still a question. When you go guy to guy, I feel like it's all leaned in the direction of, okay, like this is probably going to work, but I've also seen enough to say, like, let me wait and see on this a little bit when it comes to Rodgers, when it comes to Okudah, when it comes to the rest of the secondary. But when you have one of the best defensive lines in the NFL and also 2 of the best linebackers, and then, you have good backup linebackers, I think it makes life a lot easier for your secondary. Sorry, someone asked about how TJ Hawkinson has looked. Fantastic. I mean, really, truly fantastic. Truly fantastic. Like the same that we saw from 2022 and 2023, TJ Hawkinson, he has been everywhere in these practices. He has been the go-to guy of JJ McCarthy. I think McCarthy understands that he's going to live with TJ Hawkinson. And we saw him really push the ball today into, more of tight windows, into tighter spaces in the red zone, had a good red zone, and 1 or 2 of those throws went to Hawkinson. He's just a guy he's going to have to lean on a lot. And he clearly knows that. And Hawkinson's just really good at understanding defenses. And I think McCarthy is too. I really think that the way McCarthy's going to play early in his career is he is going to take what's there and then expand that slowly. So you even saw this in the preseason game where, maybe there's an opportunity on one play to throw it downfield and he decides to go with an underneath route and you go like, okay, like that's good. There you go. Like take that route, get the first down, move on to the next. That's TJ Hawkinson in a nutshell. Bob, have I noticed, thank you again for the super chat, Donovan Jackson, pass protection, progressing, or is he just going to pancake guys on screens? Well, yeah, let's not underrate the value of having a great screen game. Having a great screen game is going to be absolutely huge for this team, and I think that Donovan Jackson will make an impact there. When I was looking back at the preseason game, what I noticed was the initial punch would get Donovan Jackson. So just for example, and McCarthy showing already at 22, something that Kirk Cousins didn't always fully understand, which is you probably shouldn't ever mention if it was anybody else's fault, just kind of stay with what you could have done better. But when I looked back at the game again and how he played, I did notice the overthrow over Lucky Jackson, that Donovan Jackson was in McCarthy's lap a little bit and may have made the throw go a bit high. And that was because the defensive tackle got the initial punch and sent him back. So he hung on, but he got pushed back quite a bit. And I think he's still learning how to deal with the power. And he got a lot of that this week. I thought that this was big for him, though, these last 2 games. These last 2 days of practice for Donovan Jackson. They felt like games, the way we're breaking them down. But the last 2 days of practice, I felt, were very big for Donovan Jackson. The offensive line today was really good. They got beat up in that first day. They gave up a lot of pressures. I think I counted maybe 1 or 2 sacks for McCarthy today. It was not many. It was not many pressures that he ended up getting. Part of that's the ball coming out on time. I think part of it was the offensive line playing better together, and that included Donovan Jackson. There will be learning moments for Donovan Jackson early. I can guarantee that he is in for the fight of his life when he's got to play some powerful guys, because he's not a fully developed player yet, and he's being asked a lot. Go in there, start, be a difference maker, all that. That's hard to do. It was school today at left tackle. It was not, Darisaw didn't take any reps today, but major progress for Darisaw to take reps yesterday. And I also thought that school was, pretty good. I thought he was fine today. He wasn't giving up pressures left and right, which was maybe a good sign for him. He kind of needed that. There were a lot of guys, Sam Howell, Justin School, the guys who haven't had great camps. Donovan Jackson, I don't want to say it's not a good camp for him because he's a rookie, but there were a lot of guys who needed this, including Sam Howell and JJ McCarthy, and that needed to do some stuff in these practices that I felt like they did. I didn't totally come away from today thinking that about the secondary. I didn't think differently about the secondary. I thought there's going to be flaws. That's not a secondary that's got a bunch of all pros, and they probably will have to overcome they're going to have to make plays when they're there. They're going to have to overcome that there's going to be completions when the opposing quarterback has some time to throw, but that's where they've got to force some fumbles. They've got to get interceptions. And I think that that's a main theory of Brian Flores. I don't need perfect guys back there, but I need them to make some plays. I need them to catch the football. And that's where you got Theo Jackson, and Isaiah Rodgers, I think, can play the ball very well himself. Hold on. Let me scroll back. Rob says, agree about JJ being a little conservative early, which marries up with Addison's absence, more Mason and Jones and TJ and Oliver. Right. I mean, we have to keep in mind, and he mentioned it. One of his coolest throws today was a rail route where you go and wheel is the other way to describe a wheel route. You kind of know where the running back goes to the outside and it looks like it's going to be a swing pass, and then you just take off upfield, and he dropped it in the bucket. I mean, he flicked it up in the air and let him run underneath it and grabbed it, for a huge play. It would have been a 50-yard gain or 40-yard gain or something. Aaron Jones, there's a reason they brought him back. There's a reason they paid him what they paid him, because he's very important catching the ball out of the backfield for JJ McCarthy. Very important. Also, if you guys had any answers to the FanDuel question of the day, the FanDuel question of the day was, the Vikings are plus 120 to win at least 10 games. What is your confidence that they will win at least 10 games, knowing that JJ McCarthy has had a very good overall training camp? There have been no major setbacks. There hasn't been, many injuries or anything like that. So, what's your confidence? Give me a percentage. If you want a 1 out of 10, whatever it is, that's the FanDuel question of the day. So make sure that, you answer that. Now, here's what I want to know before I wrap up for tonight. It's been a great stream, and I'm glad that so many of you were able to drop in here tonight to talk about JJ McCarthy's really big and exciting practice. 10 out of 10 right away from, is that guitar person? Well, shout out to you. 9 out of 10. So I don't think you guys are wrong for setting the bar there. I really don't. I think the bar needs to be set at double-digit wins. If JJ McCarthy plays like he did these last 2 days, you're going to win a lot of games. So thank you for your answers there. 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10. You guys are excited about that. You should be. I think Dane and I felt the same way coming away from practice. And just to make a real quick point, this is why when there's a bad practice, we talk about it. And we talk about it honestly, because that means when there's a good practice, I'm telling you it was good, right? I'm not coming back every day just telling you every practice was good. So here's what I want to talk about is if you guys want to throw this in the chat as well. I'm asking for two things at once, but number one thing you're looking forward to in the preseason game. Number one thing you are looking forward to in the preseason game. Dan, how did the O-line look? Best day they've had. I think it was the best day they've had. A major part of JJ McCarthy's success throwing the football was that the offensive line was way better. And a main part of this is some of their blitzes got home in the first day, and the Vikings went back and watched tape, and they did better in the second day because they actually had something to work with for that practice. It also gave them a nice little simulated, we're going to go in, we're going to evaluate the tape, we're going to jump in, and try to apply some of that stuff. Just these little steps of training camp. And, I always try to take it in, really take it in. One of my friends who I golf with said, I don't really care about the training camp stuff. And I was like, man, it's such a big part of the journey. It's a big part of the journey. In the NFL films, in all of those old videos, the 93 Denver Broncos were destined for greatness. Like those videos, they always start with them out hitting some things in camp, right? Hitting the tackle dummies and stuff. The story of a team begins here. And I was talking, to different people about when JJ McCarthy pushed Tyler Batty because they got into it. It got chippy today. It wasn't too bad. It got chippy. And it's kind of been that way with this team. And, JJ McCarthy pushed Tyler Batty. If this team becomes really good, we'll go back to that. If this team becomes really good, we'll go back to the joint practice and go, that was the moment. It actually wasn't for Sam Darnold, which is interesting. It was kind of after that where it really started to click. It wasn't really in Cleveland. Maybe the second day in Cleveland where it started to come together. But right here, this is the moment, right? If it turns out to be really good, that we'll remember each one of those things along the way that presented themselves as the season went along. So it's been a big part of it. But I'm curious what you guys want to see in the second preseason game. I mean, number one by far, the most answered is Max Brosmer, and it should be. Had a good conversation with us yesterday, Max Brosmer, and just really, really, really impressed with him as a person and as a hard worker and as a passer. And he's got in a couple times and made plays. How about this for a guy who's, the third or fourth quarterback, and he's an undrafted free agent. He's never played in this league before. And they're like, hey, jump in there and take 3 reps. But that's all you get today. And then he'll complete a pass or make a nice play, hitting Tim Jones today. And then it's like, all right, get out of there. It's not an easy existence. And yet Brosmer has really thrived with it. So I agree, of course, Max Brosmer is a big part of this. We'll see how much he gets to play. I would guess it's going to be quite a bit. Thank you also, Kurt, for the compliments. I appreciate that very much. Good answer from David. Elijah Williams. How about Elijah Williams getting a shout out from the head man today as Kevin O'Connell talked about the defensive line and he just tossed out Elijah Williams' name. I was like, oh, okay. I still think Elijah Williams is going to be probably somebody that ends up on the practice squad and is a development player. And we're going to hear a lot from him in the future. Just a kid who's got some power to him, some natural power. How would I compare JJ at this point to Darnold last year? So Darnold, the week before the first preseason game, try to remember these sections of camp correctly. Right before they went into the first preseason game, Darnold started to have it click. And he was starting to find Jefferson a lot. And remember, this is a big factor for McCarthy that he has not had Justin Jefferson. Like that matters. That he's not had Justin Jefferson. Darnold did. And Darnold was starting to connect with him a lot and had some really good practices leading into the first preseason game. Then he goes into the first preseason game, looks great in his first drive, hits some nice throws, gets moving. And coming out of that, I think the joint practices came next. The first day was really bad. The second day was pretty good for Darnold. And it felt like that was his turning point and he built off of that. And that next week, he was just great. He was on point. That's when I started to feel like maybe I'm not crazy for picking this team to win 10 games last year. And so I think it's a very similar type of timeline. I think it is a very similar type of timeline where Darnold would have some really good practices. Darnold would have some bad practices. And I will admit that last year, I didn't write down every Darnold pass. Why would I, right? I mean, I just thought, well, let me watch the guard on this play. Let me watch the corner on this play, and I'll see what happens, and, that kind of thing. This year has been different because I've watched every single McCarthy pass, and I've written down every single McCarthy pass and tried to convey those details to you guys because that's what you're looking for. And so it's been a little different, like how many percentages of completions did he have? I thought that Darnold's confidence in throwing down the field started to really show itself and looked terrific coming out of the joint practices. Also, when they signed Gilmore, there was a different vibe from everyone. Like, okay, like they believe in us. So I think it's really come around the same way, where it's ups and downs, learning phase, a couple padded practices that are good, a couple that might not go so good. I mean, Darnold had, I think, a terrible night practice too last year, where he threw an interception to Andrew Van Ginkel. Same with McCarthy having a bad one this year. So I think it's been really similar, actually, with both of them. And it just takes time to learn Kevin O'Connell's offense and to do it with a lot of receivers that are not the biggest names. Although I will say most of his great throws have gone to Hockenson and Addison, as you would expect, and as will happen in the regular season. Let's see. So what else you guys looking for in the preseason? The kick, yeah, they did not do kicking today. They did it yesterday, and Will Reichert hit every kick. So Reichert is back. Yep. Dan says running back competition, Xavier Scott building on what he did before. And Ty Felton, I agree. Like Ty Felton had a very nice start to his preseason. He got a kick return where he had to run the ball down, and he had a nice catch on third down. And this is what I talk about. It's not like I don't see anything with Ty Felton. I see it. It's just he needs time. It's sort of like we saw it with Naylor, and he just needs time. Steven, I can mention something about Dwight McGlothern. Dwight McGlothern has a tendency to kind of troll, and he broke up a pass and like threw it at the other team. It's just like he finds a way to get under people's skin. But you're right. He hasn't gotten mentioned that much because he wasn't out there as much as still Zamaya Vaughn, Blackman, and Okudah with that second unit. And it looks like he has kind of fallen down a little. Does that mean they move on from him? I had him on my 53, so I don't think so because he's got some experience, but it really has felt like they've liked Vaughn better. Frank, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm glad that this has become a favorite part of your evening. I'm still trying to work out exactly how the schedule is going to go for the regular season, but there's going to be a lot of these chats and conversations. Probably Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Maybe if something happens Friday or Saturday, we'll see. But I've really enjoyed after every training camp practice. I think there was only one that was a walkthrough that I didn't do after. Every other training camp practice, we've gone live. We've broken it down. I've had a great time doing it. Love the chat every night, getting into different topics and giving great feedback and everything. So I really appreciate that. As far as the FanDuel question of the day, a lot of you were in the range of 90% chance, 70% chance. Zoomer Kev was at 70% chance. I mean, I think that's really fair when it comes to like being confident that they can win 10 or more because it's the NFL and things can happen. You just never really know. But I think there should be a lot of confidence coming out of this. Orion says Miles Price balls out in the next 2 games. I mean, look, I'm not disagreeing with you. Miles Price had a great catch today. He's been able to, catch a lot of punts, and he's got some yards after catch ability to him. So, he's caught my eye a little bit, but I think he's clearly behind Silas Bolden for the punt returning competition. He's going to have to earn it. And look, when it comes to, Steven says that he muffed a punt today. I mean, look, when it comes to the punt returning, you have to do it in games. I mean, I asked that to Matt Daniels early in training camp. I was like, how do you evaluate him out here? And he's like, well, we try. They try the best they can, but you really can only evaluate them in the games. That's just kind of the fact of the matter, that's the only time you can really have the full speed. Let's see, guitar person, do you think not playing McCarthy in the preseason could make a difference of slow out of the gate? I think that this experience here, and McCarthy did talk about that. I don't have that clip, but he did talk about it. I think this experience here over the last 2 days is 50 times better than a preseason game. It's just, I wish that they put it on TV. I wish that they put it at US Bank Stadium where you could have 60,000 people see the entire practice, because it was really that much fun today. But when you see all the stuff he had to do today, 2-minute drill, red zone, the amount of pressure that the Patriots are putting on, the pass rush, all that stuff, and then compare it to going out there and just have vanilla, just totally vanilla stuff. I mean, it's so much better. It's so much, and he said that. He said it's just so much better, to get the experience from the last 2 days, just so much better. So, no, I'm not concerned about him not playing in the preseason. And when you think about it, you go back to like every year, it's been a question to KOC, like, don't you think you should play your starters more in the preseason? And he's always like, no. and look, Naylor might be banged up. We're not sure. Metellus was a little banged up today. They lost Rondale Moore. They lost Zeke Correll. They lost those players during preseason games. It's just more dangerous to put them out there in preseason games. They're going to go for now, the fourth straight season? No, how many are we on? Fourth straight season of O'Connell. No, 2, 3, 4. Yes. The fourth straight season of Kevin O'Connell. They're going to go into the season healthy. And that's their main goal. And look, JJ McCarthy running one series. I wanted to see more from him from that first game. I wanted to see a first half. But then when you consider that, yes, you'd have to play the whole offensive line, I get it. And I kind of backtracked on that and said, okay, I get it. Because you have to play Ryan Kelly the whole first half, and you can't lose Ryan Kelly. And that's the other point. You can't just put him out there with like Michael Juergens in the second unit and then get him hit. Like it's not ideal. Asa says, if McCarthy's day was a 10 out of 10, what would you say Kirk's average training camp with KOC was out of 10 for comparison? There were so many practices that I saw of Kirk Cousins. I saw every different form of Kirk Cousins practice. Look, when Kirk was on point, it was like this. And I mean that as a compliment to JJ McCarthy. Like, he looked like a veteran quarterback today. When Kirk was really on point, he was really, really good with his accuracy, his anticipation. They had, I think it was San Francisco was the joint practices where Kirk was really good. I don't think he ever had an offensive line that helped him out too much in joint practices, but I mean, he knew where to put the football. He was very, very accurate. And that's the thing about Kirk, is that he could make a lot of different types of throws. So he was very good at anticipating deep throws. He could hit intermediate stuff. He could hit the short, quick stuff. And that's what you have to do. Like, Kirk was a top 15 quarterback. Like, he was really a good quarterback. And there's a lot of other complicating factors to the Kirk Cousins legacy in Minnesota, but he's a very good NFL starting quarterback for his career. And if JJ McCarthy plays on the same, if he's the 12th best quarterback, this team's winning the division because they're that good from top to bottom. So this looked like a fully developed pro quarterback. Now, it didn't look quite like Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's best practices were breathtaking. I mean, they were just, oh my gosh, he just hit his fourth 40-yard throw or something, because he was so dedicated to throwing down the field, where I think that McCarthy is very much on point with where the play leads him, which is much more of a Kirk mentality. But then, and I always thought this, like, even let's say that McCarthy plays mostly like Cousins, but he can fit a little bit more tight window, and then he scrambles every time for a first down that he's got an opportunity. I mean, then you've got something, because that was always the struggle. It was the contract, of course. You couldn't build a team like this around Kirk, but it was also the playmaking. And McCarthy, another thing that separates him too from Cousins, and again, this is with all credit to Kirk Cousins on a great career that earned him a lot of money and won a lot of games and all that sort of stuff. Went 17-8 with Kevin O'Connell. there was a play today where McCarthy rolled to his right. And I'm trying to think who he threw it to. Maybe it was Lucky Jackson in the back of the end zone. And he flipped the hips, rolling full speed, and let it loose. And that ball was cooking, and it was accurate, and he was escaping pressure, and you went, that's the one. That's the one. That's an athlete. That's a first-round athlete. That's a guy who has top-notch quickness, top-notch athleticism. That's the difference. And a playmaking, very much a playmaking mentality. And I think he really has that. And what happened here today is that I think his confidence really came together, because we could talk about it all day long. And I think he's a very confident person. He's projected that from day one. He's run a lot of practices confidently, but every single human being having a practice like that today would walk off and be like, I can do this. I can make that throw. And that's what he did today. So it doesn't, put him in the Hall of Fame. Like we were joking, walking off, first player ever to have a Hall of Fame ceremony after his first joint practice or whatever, that kind of stuff, joking around. But it just means that you're seeing a lot of the boxes that you wanted to be checked. That's what it means. That's the biggest thing. Conrad, no. McCarthy is definitely not playing. Nope. Howell is going to play, though. Howell's going to play, and then it'll be Rippin and Brosmer. And I know for sure that you guys will be all in on Brosmer, which I will be too. Asa, good to see you. Says, been hearing from some reporters there's a legitimate chance of a punting battle. Do you think there's actual steam there? Apparently, Chapman has killed it so far. I don't disagree that Chapman has been good. He has there's different names for it. I think Jordan Berry said it was like a banana punt. There's what's the thing that you throw and then it comes back to you? There's some very interesting ways that Chapman punts the ball, and I think they're hard to return, but I'm still leaning toward you don't want to mess with Will Reichard. You don't want to mess with Will Reichard unless you are really concerned about Ryan Wright, and you can keep him on the roster. The boomerang. Yes, thank you. The boomerang. Appreciate that. You guys are on point tonight. When I needed to know cut down day, you got it. When I needed to know the boomerang punt, you got it. Thank you. Thank you. Frisbee does not come back to you. The boomerang comes back to you. And that's what Jordan Berry explained it to me one time about where you kick it. He was using a Gatorade bottle because I asked him, I'm like, what is it that you do with that thing? And he's got a Gatorade bottle. He's holding up and showing me like how some Australians kick it kind of on the side or with the side of their foot. And it makes it fall out of the air all crazy. And he clearly did that on that punt that got fumbled. But the fact that they can keep him on the practice squad for free makes me think that Ryan Wright will still be the punter. But hey, look, there's always a competition. There's always a punting competition. At least we've gone far enough where the second guy hasn't gotten cut. So I do think, but Ryan Wright holding, he used to play quarterback, I think, Ryan Wright, and he's got good ball skills, and the difference is small. The difference is small with the punting, but it's huge with the holding. That's just at least my understanding. The year that Dan Bailey fell apart, I think holding was an issue. So Red, who's the punt returner? We're going to find out. But we are going to start, I think, that competition with Silas Bolden. Or the conversation with Silas Bolden. And he's got a chance. I mean, he goes back there and he handles the ball well and he makes plays, then they're going to give him a chance, I think, for sure. Where, he was a really good punt returner in college and he catches the ball well. I was watching him today after practice. He catches the ball smoothly, cleanly. And if he can make some plays, I think that they might go for it and trust him. Otherwise, you're probably looking for somebody else. Because I don't know that they would go with Price right off the bat. I don't know. Lucky Jackson was back there a little bit. I don't know if they would go with him. So, Jim, how many rushing touchdowns does McCarthy get? That's a good point. Yeah, I agree, Jim. If he doesn't muff punts, then that's all they really need. Just catch the ball. Catch the ball. And if there's a ton of room, take it and just get down. I think that McCarthy will run for a handful of touchdowns. Yeah, I don't know if I would go 5, although technically I guess a handful is 5. A couple? I would say a couple. Here's the question is how many first downs does he run for? I'm going to go with like 25. maybe that needs to be a FanDuel question of the day. Maybe 20, 25 first downs. I think that would be a pretty good number. So anyway, guitar person, are they going to go for Odell Beckham? I don't know. I could see it. Yeah, Bran, you're right. If they were in the Super Bowl, I think you're right. They would put Isaiah Rodgers back there. He's clearly the best guy on the team. They just, want him to play number one corner. Is holding more important than punting? I'd say hands down it is. Absolutely. They need their kicker to be good. If the difference between the punting is a couple of net yards, it's 3 net yards. Well, okay. You'll just deal with that. But if you're not comfortable kicking off of a certain holder, which he missed a kick with Oscar Chapman in there, and I don't know if Chapman's ever done it, you're in for a long season if your kicker is unhappy. But as far as Beckham goes, I would give it maybe a 20% chance, 10%, probably 10% chance of happening. It just seems like it would be unlikely with considering where Odell's been over the last couple of years. Is he healthy? Plus, when you bring in Odell Beckham, it draws a lot of attention. It's hard to bring in Odell Beckham and say, just fill in a little role. That makes it harder. Are there any undrafted free agent running backs still available? I mean, there's a lot of undrafted people who are still available. I like the running back room though. I really like the running back room. The way that Xavier Scott has stepped up. If Ty Chandler is the 4th running back and they keep him as a kick returner, like that's pretty good. Or if Xavier Scott just makes the team because he's been great. I mean, Asa, no, the holding stuff, it's not psychological. And here's how I know this. This is funny. This just shows you the number of football conversations I have with people. Because when I get off here, I go talk football with other people. It's just, that's why we're here, right? I had a long discussion one time with Sage Rosenfels because he was a great holder. And I believe he held for the New York Giants the year he was their backup, about how to be a great holder. And it is not something that is that easy to do. And there's a lot of punters who stay in the league because they're good at it and because they could be trusted. It is super hard to catch it and get it down there and spin it. And they have a great long snapper, absolutely fantastic long snapper, but it's not an easy thing to do. And the fact that Ryan Wright can do it and the kicker trusts him, you want to stay with that. Can Chandler actually return kicks? He's fast, but not elusive. He's been okay. He's returned a handful of them. He's been okay. I think he had 12 last year. Is fine. His best return ever got called back, I think, for something. Chris says defensive backs will be our downfall. Hope I'm wrong. This last year, and I know it's different, but last year the defensive backs were Stephon Gilmore, Shaq Griffin, and Cam Bynum's a good player for sure. But those were 2 of your corners, and they finished with a top 5 defense. Again, I know AFC South, but they didn't have the pass rush they have. I think it's still a concern, but I don't think that it is. When you say downfall, I where it's been in camp, I have felt like this is good enough to win a lot of games with. But I haven't felt like, wow, everyone was totally wrong for questioning the secondary. After the last few days with the Patriots, I thought, yeah, that's not a good receiving group, and they did make a number of plays. So you could be right as far as like it's not going to be a downfall of this defense is horrible, but could it be a big situation that they need Jeff Okudah one-on-one with somebody and, that kind of thing? Like that is a concern. I think that is a concern. So anyway, well, it's been a really great chat, guys. It's been a really great chat. And I think that this was probably the most exciting training camp day that I've had covering the Vikings. Maybe ever, because of the stakes, because of how interesting it is to see someone kind of right before your eyes taking big steps and developing and then thinking about what they're going to be. It was a fun day for everybody. So if you missed any of my conversation with Dane Mizatani, please go back and check it out. the plan for right now is to do a post-game show after Saturday, and myself and Dane will be at US Bank Stadium as we always are, and we'll be doing it from there. And if anything else happens, always possible that I will be back here tomorrow. So thank you guys so much for such a great chat, such a great conversation. Again, just really fun day that, maybe down the line we are going to be talking about, hey, remember when he had that great joint practice and we did a 2 hour and 15-minute live stream about a joint practice. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate all of your time and you guys listening. It means a lot to me, and just can't wait to go forward covering the rest of this thing here. So take care, everyone. Good night. And hey, sign up for the newsletter, purpleinsider.football. Football.